Aloha and welcome to Connection to the Cosmos with your host, me, Dr. Lisa Thompson, where I have out of this world conversations with extraordinary people. Today, I am very excited to have on Beth Ward, and we're going to bring her on in just a moment. But first, a couple of announcements. If you have not had the opportunity to grab my free 20-minute meditative journey to meet your galactic family and guides, make sure you do so at mysticmanta.com or drlisajthompson.com. Also, February 21st, 22nd, online, I'm going to be teaching my Galactic Ascension Channel certification program. So check that out if you want to add to your already existing spiritual business. I'm also going to be leading my Galactic retreat here on the Big Island of Hawaii, April 30th to May 4th. So come see me and let's do deep dive connection with all things galactic. And last week, I'm so excited, my newest book, Awakening to Your Multidimensional Self, Harnessing Energy, Timelines, and Higher Consciousness, just came out. So grab your copy from Amazon or get the Kindle, however you like to read. Really transformational book. I'm so excited about it. And then if you're coming to Hawaii, specifically to the Big Island, Kona side, then come on one of my Big Island UFO tours where you will see the night sky in a whole new way using my Generation 3 military night vision goggles. And for more information about that, go to bigislandufotours.com. So without further ado, I'm bringing on Beth. Hi, Beth.
Hello.
So great to have you on. And I'm going to read your bio now, and I cannot wait for the conversation we're going to have.
Thank you.
Beth Ward is a dynamic catalyst for transformation dedicated to awakening the boundless potential within others. With her rare ability to dissolve perceived limitations, Beth transforms barriers into bridges of insight, innovation, and profound personal evolution. Her lifelong conscious connection with extraterrestrial beings has gifted her with some of her most cherished memories, woven with unconditional love, wisdom, and an expanded perspective of existence. As humanity awakens to a new era of authenticity, empowerment, and galactic citizenship, Beth has embraced her calling to share this empowering connection with the world. Through spiritual coaching, transformative classes, and channel discussions, she helps others unlock their true power and align with their highest purpose. So we have a lot in common, and we are just now meeting for the first time. And so I can't wait to have this conversation.
Yay, me too.
Yeah. So first of all, just like at the beginning of all my shows, just so I understand and the audience understands, I would love to know your background and how you grew up, spiritual, religious, something else, so that we can understand how you got on this whole spiritual and ET kind of journey.
Yeah, so we don't really have a category for how I grew up. I came into my incarnation awake.
Okay.
So as a little tiny kid, I knew why I was here and what was happening in the bigger picture. And I was working with ETs actually from a baby on. I know that sounds crazy. We can unpack that in a minute.
Yeah.
And I suppose my grandma was, she's Presbyterian, and she would take me to church, which I really enjoyed the vibe in there of sort of peace, because I had a really dark, traumatic childhood. And so that was sort of a safe, quiet place. But it wasn't more than that. So I didn't really grow up religious or spiritual. Although I was now, I guess the way we use the word spirituality, I was practicing spirituality all the time because I was hanging out with the higher dimensionals. And so that was just normal, my normal.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so yes, tell me about, since you were a baby, of with the ETs, and I guess, are there specific groups that you were working with, or one particular one, or to share more about that?
Well, I think I worked with a lot of different ETs, but specifically when I was young, especially like under the age of 11, baby to 11, I was working with a hybrid program. So that what we think of as the grays,
Yeah.
right? And I know that there's a wide spectrum of experience with the grays for a lot of people. And I actually just did a podcast about what is the hybrid program and what happened a minute ago. But when I was working with them, a lot of the work they would come into my room physically, but then I would also go into the astral realm. And when you're in the astral realm, you can be any age. So, and you don't have to be a age, you can just be energy too. And so it was like I was on a team and they were like, okay, let's go, time to get to work, and I would work with them all the time. And it was just normal for me. And I can't remember specifically what we were doing.
Okay.
But I knew that it was like all planned in advance and we were just following the plan we had laid. And it was pretty not a big deal. It's just what we did. And my parents, again, because I had such a traumatic childhood, they weren't really present in my childhood. But at one point, my mom remembers a couple of years ago, she said to me, remember when you were little and you kept telling me I could see the little gray men that came into your room if I would just stay awake at night and sit in your room? So you had me sit in there and then they didn't come and you were just furious that they didn't show up. I don't remember that, but I remember having pictures of them all over my bedroom. Like that's all I drew.
Wow.
And I thought that what we would call God at that point, and this is, long time ago, and ETs were all the same thing. I didn't differentiate because my experience with ETs was this profound, unconditional love. And so it's just all love. And I didn't need to sort of distinguish among them.
I love that. And so I know I've had others on the show and I've talked about my own kind of hybrid experience, but just from your perspective, if you want to just share a little bit more for maybe someone hasn't heard of what this hybrid program is, maybe they're new to you and me, share a little bit more about what that actually means. Because I'm part of that program as well from multiple facets.
Okay, so here's the down and dirty of that. And this is based on my current understanding. I'm sure when we hang out with ET soon, they'll get us really squared away and we'll laugh at the things that maybe weren't true, but we thought were true. But this is my current understanding, which is that there are many timelines. Everything happens in the now moment. There really isn't a past or a future, but there are within the now many timelines. So if we want to look at it linearly through time, through that filter, there's some major timelines where humans are on and developing. And one, not our current one, but another one parallel to us. Those humans progress naturally over thousands of years, and they got pretty mental and really driven with external technology outside of themselves. So like machines and science and stuff. And they eventually ruined the surface of the earth and they moved underground. And at this point they could clone, and they were like super smart, and they started modifying themselves for living like that. And they discovered that the more they would shut down their heart chakra, the more they could expand their mental space. And so they got to the point where they became masters of this and highly focused, and eventually evolved into what we think of as the grays. And they mastered timeline manipulation and a whole bunch of technology, and they eventually hit an evolutionary dead end and could no longer reproduce and were going to die out as a species. And they went to higher dimensionals and said, help, we don't want that to happen. And they learned that it was because they didn't evolve all their energy centers equally together, and that the shutting down of the heart space was specifically causing the end of the species. And so with them, they developed what we think of as the hybrid program, where they would extract DNA. And I think this is light energetic DNA. It could be physical, but I don't think so. From other human parallel timelines, they're similar to theirs, but before any sort of heading into this kind of left field like they did. Because I guess we've learned that humans tend to lean mental pretty quickly in their evolution, and it takes some work to allow all the other energy centers to come online together as a group. And so they went to many timelines, including ours that we're sitting on here now, and extracted that. It's my understanding that they reached out to their human counterparts. So it's my understanding that if you were in the hybrid program, you have a gray counterpart on that timeline as well. And I've met mine, and they also, I think, picked people to work with that were kind of specialized in opening the heart space pretty early and pretty profoundly. And so I think there's a lot of, obviously strategy to this. And then it often followed genetic lines, like you'll see mother, daughter, granddaughter. That's the case in my family. Or, son, grandchild, all that. And so they got DNA. It lasted for about 80 years. So it started in linearly what we think of as like the late 1800s, early 1900s till about 1980-ish. And it was a success. They created 5 hybrid species. And we're familiar with the later ones. We're not so familiar with the first, if we count them as the first race, then the second race, which was their DNA plus another, ours together, made pretty much the same gray, not much change. Mm-hmm. And then we keep adding in, this earlier DNA, and we get the Essassani, or the Sasani, who live on planet Essassani. So if you guys know Daryl Anka, who channels Bashar, that's like the third race. And then we get the Shayayel, which is even more human-like. And then we get the Yael, which is finally the Sasani is a 50-50 mix, I think. And then once we hit the Yael, the species look almost human. I think the big difference would be their eyes are a little bit bigger and farther apart. They're more petite. Their hair is a little bit thinner. But they have been studying us, the Yael, those who are interested, their whole lives and for open contact. So they will be the race, or with the other races that we have first global open contact with. Mm-hmm. And then once we become galactic citizens, we become the 6th hybrid race. Now, I don't know what that means energetically. I don't know if that's a physical thing or an energetic, how we're viewed thing, or maybe all of those things. But it's beautiful how it's put together. And I know there's some really scary stories out there, and I don't want to dismiss that. But aside from that, it's this beautiful dance of this one type of human who need help, and they go to this other type of human, and we merged those genetics. And in that process, they help us become galactic citizens. So we're equally benefiting from each other. And they just love us so much, and all the species that were created. And we have a big family reunion coming down the road.
Yeah, I absolutely love that, because, I realized several years ago, like I always had this kind of, inkling that I was maybe part of the hybrid program, but then I got like full just knowingness of several years ago. And then a couple years ago, when I was actually working with my 13 of my races, which, there's so many more that I work with and am, but I got to fully, like you, experience my counterpart as myself as a Zeta. And I'm like, I know I would totally volunteer. Yes, sign me up to come in as Earth Lisa to be part of this hybrid program. And so I love everything that you just shared, and it's my understanding as well as what happened. So we're definitely on the same page with that. So thank you for sharing that. So then I would love to know then how this progressed through your childhood into your adulthood. And are there other groups that you are now working with or understanding?
Yeah, so it continued. And again, because I had such an abusive, dark childhood, and we're talking like, I know a lot of people have a lot of trauma, and this one was for the books. And so at about 5, I was thinking, I felt like I had the weight of the world on me, and I couldn't do it. I just was like, and I knew there's natural exit ramps in your
Yeah.
incarnation you can take if you want to. And I knew I was coming upon one. And I was like, I think I'm going to take that exit ramp. I remember consciously thinking that because I was like, between my childhood situation, how my life was personally. And then at the time, there was a lot of starvation on the planet. And it was so dense. This is back in the 70s.
Yeah.
Um,
I think we're in the same age bracket.
yeah, like I think I'm 55 or 56. Yeah.
And I just turned
Yeah, so I was born in 69. So this would be like, through the first half of the 70s. And
yeah.
And I just was like, it's too dense. Like I can't, whatever, the thing I came here to do to help, I can't, it's too hard. It's too dense.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt like I wore out. And then some beings came and visited me in the field next door in the middle of the night. And they are from another universe, and they don't have a name. They don't want a name. That's important energetically for them. They were one, I channeled them for a while, and everyone used to, this is years ago, everyone was like, we want to know their name. We want to know where they're from. Are they physical? And they kept pushing back and saying, feel the vibration. That's not important. No, we don't want a name. But they came and shared with me this profound love that we don't have words for, that all I can say is pure source love. And it helped me remember where I came from, my natural state, all of us, our natural state, and what I couldn't feel being in the incarnation. And I could see the bigger picture, and I left that experience knowing it's just temporary. That was the message. It's just temporary. And I was like, oh, because I felt so trapped. And I was like, oh, okay. I can do it. I'm back on my horse. I can do it. And that was just a beautiful experience. And they felt like my family, and I didn't want them to leave, but they left, and I knew they had to go. And so then growing up in grade school and high school, I learned immediately as a kid not to talk about my ET friends.
Yeah.
It did not go over well.
Back in the 70s and 80s.
And I learned not to talk about like how I knew what people, I didn't always, but often I knew like how people felt and what they were thinking and sort of what their perspective and strategy was. And I just got in trouble so much. So I just kept that all quiet. And then in 1987, which was the year I graduated, I could not stop talking about my ET experiences. Like it was coming out of my mouth involuntarily. It was like I would vomit out all these crazy stories in the most awkward, inappropriate spaces. It was so embarrassing, and I could not stop it. And everyone's face was this, like, and then just they were like, get this crazy Looney Tunes out of here. And then I learned later that like some sort of energetic shift happened on the planet in 87, and it opened up a whole bunch of energy we didn't have access to. And I think that's why it happened, because the year later, I didn't have to tell anybody anything, and it stopped.
Interesting.
So I made a fool of myself all over the place. And then, so it just was my internal world, and I didn't think much about it. And I lived a normal life, and I raised kids and ran business and all of that. And then finally, and I obviously had worked on my childhood trauma my whole life. And then finally, what seemed like a coincidence wasn't obviously a coincidence. My counselor was actually the first person, as far as I know, in America to study open contact experiences as scientifically. It was Dr. Sprinkle, and he's really known and revered in the ET community years ago. He's since passed on, but he was also just an everyday therapist. And it turns out he just lived like a block and a half from me the whole time I lived in my house. And then here he's my counselor, which was what I really needed, because he lived 100% open spiritually. And so here's the kind of counseling I had. I'd show up and he'd be like, okay, my spirit guide said this morning we should talk about blah, blah, blah. And I'm sort of hearing maybe tweak that a little bit. And I'd be like, yeah, and also blah, blah, you know. I finally had a partner to just be myself with and to normalize all of this. And we never talked about ETs. We just talked about my personal work. But as my counseling was ending and he was retiring, on the last day, I said, do you want to take my story? You've taken them from people all over the world, and we've never talked about it. Do you want to record mine? Mm-hmm. He was like, I've never done that. And I was like, no. It's like, yeah. And so we did it, and it was fun. But that really helped me sort of come more into myself and sort of claim who I've always been. And I think I've just been doing that ever since, as we lighten up in frequency. Mm-hmm. I've been able to, I think, access more and more of my multidimensionality and I think the energy that I came here to share and command.
Beautiful. So I would love to know then how you opened up your channel, and like in terms of what prompted you, what inspired you to actually then start channeling. And because like for me, I grew up and so I met you because of a mutual friend from Reuben Langdon's community, Bruce Smith, who was a guest on my show. And Reuben, I was on his show and was getting to talk about my experiences growing up in the Ramtha School of Enlightenment, which Reuben's mom had been a part of. And so,
which I also listened to.
Okay. And so channeling, back in the 80s, channeling was like, okay, this is weird, but the information that was coming through was really good. And I never thought I would be a channel, right? So I'm just curious, how you got inspired to do that.
Well, it was Reuben. So Reuben was doing his series looking for ETs and ended up finding spirituality. And he was looking for UFO experts and ended up finding all these channelers who are bringing through higher dimensional information. And I stumbled upon that I don't know when he made it, but I'm probably like a year after he made it. Like this is probably like 9 years ago or something. And was watching it, and I was like, oh my gosh, we have a spiritual phone book. Like for those of you old enough to remember the phone book, right? It had everybody's name and address and phone number in it. And I was like, oh, the people, like somebody has like cataloged all the people. It just did something for me. It really validated that what I was feeling, which is we were coming into a new age, a new era. And then it sort of turned on for me this feeling I hadn't had since I was little of there's something I'm supposed to fulfill. I play a role in this. And so as I listened to all of those, I was like, I think I can channel, but I want to be like a really clean channel. Like I want to do like, and this is like my personality, like I want to be like the cleanest, best channel I can be, like I'm always like put 1,000% into something. And which is good, got me through my childhood.
Yeah.
But so I went to a channeling school, and on the first day I learned, yep, I've been channeling my whole life. Check.
Yeah.
And then in the channeling school, I was learning like all this vibrational work. Like not all the students were, but because I knew how to channel, I could sort of hear other instructions, because we were learning, interestingly enough, from Archangel Michael.
Okay.
That's who was being channeled to teach us. And so I was given a lot of like energetic exercises to be able to feel vibrationally the difference between different messaging and different entities and all of these things. And I don't know if you would agree. I think channeling is also like fast counseling.
Yeah.
Because it pokes on all your unprocessed stuff and brings it up to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a lesson in self-love and self-acceptance and self-compassion. And then I learned that the more I applied those things, the better my channeling got. And so eventually I first started, I thought, okay, I'm just going to do this publicly because I do know what I'm doing. And the information coming through feels like it's supposed to get out to people. So I'm just going to build a quick website, do this. And I had, of course, practiced on a few people, and they were like, whoa, like, I'm going to have to unpack that for months, and B, like, I didn't even know I needed that. And thank you so much. So the information coming through was great. And so I went through iterations. Like I first started channeling Ishta from the Yael, which is like we talked about, one of the hybrid species. That was my counterpart in the Yael group. And then I channeled Alex, which is a Saurian being, a counterpart of me on the Galactic Federation ship. And she also is a guide to other people I know.
Okay, interesting.
So that's really funny.
Yeah.
Basically all my guides, that's who I channel. And then I channeled the group from the other universe that are sort of quasi-physical. They're not very physical.
Mm-hmm.
And then and I got training from each of them on different aspects of channeling. And then after that, it was like anything goes. And what they shared with me was I became sort of like think of a watering hole. And all the different animals come to drink at the watering hole. They said, I'm a portal. They're like, you're like literally a portal. I think we all are a portal. And I've used my portal abilities, I guess, in this way, that they said all kinds of things come, and it's a gigantic group. So like when I channel for people, it's ETs, ascended masters, angels, non-physical soul collectives, things I don't even have names for. Like it's gigantic.
Yeah.
And then it's braided together through me. So I hear just one message, one coherent message. And that's what's shared. And they share the flavor changes and sort of what's kind of stepping forward and what's stepping back shifts according to who's listening. So it's very personal. And they share a lot of energy to a lot. Sometimes it's only about energy, and it's cool because if people can actually feel it, which is just fun, to be the telephone line between the people and the energy they need. So yeah, so I've just kind of played around with it, and now I'm at a point where this is going to sound kind of weird. I don't even know quite how to articulate it, but I've gone through a lot of change in the last couple of years and moved sort of from a state of exploring separation to a state of oneness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just part of the ascension process. And
Right.
so now, instead of all of that being out there and I sort of reach for it energetically, it's all in here now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that. I resonate with everything that you just said, because I do feel like a portal of, like, there are people like us that's our mission here, to be these galactic ambassadors, essentially. And really, when we're channeling, we are channeling just aspects of ourselves, because we are multidimensional.
Right.
And for me, when I realized it was just me from those realms that I was bringing that information through, there was no more fear. Like, okay, there's nothing that's negative or bad that's going to come through. But also, for me, being so connected and realizing that I am multifaceted in this way, it has really elevated my life to be in that higher perspective, and coming from love and non-judgment and all those things. And I'm sure you're very similar in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a fun and interesting journey. The guides used to say, we're playing the greatest game of hide and seek ever, where we sort of hide ourselves and our power from ourselves, and then we discover it. And it has been, I think we like won the lottery ticket to the best game ever.
Well, okay, so people in your world, like your family, your friends, what do they think of all this? Are they supportive, accepting, or like, are you the black sheep of the family or the sparkly sheep of the family?
Well, it's really funny. So I think about 10 years ago, I just woke up one day and realized I hadn't been talking to my kids about ETs. I had only, it was so internal for me. It didn't occur to me to kind of educate my kids about this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just busy, like, being a mom and a worker and all of that. And so I finally so about 2015, 14, 15. And again, I think another energetic shift happened on the planet. And so this probably like pushed
I
me.
resonate with that fully. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like, hey guys, by the way, here's what I understand to be
Mm-hmm.
going on. And they were like, makes sense. Okay, got it. I was like, wow, okay, that was cool. And my husband was less into it. He was just like, you can do your thing. I respect that. I don't know what I believe. And I don't want to like hang out and talk about it, but I'm, obviously you be you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, that's decent. At least he's not saying I don't like that. Right. And then we moved to Nashville from Wyoming and started the in-person contact and seeing craft in the sky, and all these things started just happening like crazy, and to all of us. And well, to me and the girls mostly. And I learned that in Nashville, there's less of a veil. The veil is thinner. And
It is here in Hawaii too.
yes, yeah, I've had a pretty profound experience in Hawaii. And so and then one time, and so I'm going to talk about it. My husband, he was like, I don't know if, that's true. I don't want to talk about it. And then one night, our whole house shook. And my first thought was, oh my gosh, all of our art is going to fall off the wall and break, and that's framed. And I was like, all of our art is breaking. Like everything was like, blah, 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 blah. And then it stopped. And when it started happening, we both sat straight up in bed, and everything was vibrating and shaking. And I was like, earthquake, what's happening? Like, oh my God. And then it just stopped. And Brian wasn't even awake. And he said, they're here. I was like, yep. And I jumped out of bed and I looked out and I couldn't see anything. And so later in a channeling, I was like, okay, I was asking someone, like I had a Yael channel, like I paid somebody to channel for me. And I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, that was our ship. We can come in that area really easily. And they said, this is not accurate, but the closest thing words we can use is our like anti-gravity mechanism vibrates the physical things like houses. And I was like, oh, that's cool. So I thought it was kind of funny. He was like, they're here.
Yeah. Real quick, did he become more of a believer after that?
I think unconsciously, yes, not consciously. And so then I left work, and this about 2 years ago, it was time to transition, and I was really being pushed to channel for people and do something differently and really share my gifts in a different way. And let's not call them gifts. The template I picked for my incarnation, because we all have it. And it was time to start expressing that in a more relevant way. And so I built, like I said, my website up and started channeling for people. And I didn't ever really talk to my I don't really have any family on my side, but my in-laws and whatnot, all of them. I mean, my mom, I did tell my mom, who's still around, and she was like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Makes sense, kind of. And then I didn't really talk to my extended family or my in-laws because it wasn't relevant. And I just sort of figured it feels so natural to me, just being me, that if people have questions, I'm an open book. They can ask me anything and I would never be offended. And I didn't feel the need to go tell everyone who wasn't even interested, and it's not in their world and it doesn't make sense to them.
Yeah.
Like I didn't need that relationship to change like that, because it's not based on that anyway. We share other things in common. So I just let it be. And if people have questions, they can ask me. But I don't think they do.
Okay. Well, and I love that. I mean, like for me, I don't like push it on everyone for sure, but I'm very just here teaching and sharing and doing what I do. And the people who want to understand more, they are attracted to that then.
Exactly. And like all my friends, like I've went through phases where I didn't really need or have friends, and then I had a bunch, and then I didn't have any, and then I had a bunch. And so when I was shifting, I didn't really I had a few friends to tell, and that made me the most nervous. And they were like, oh, I'm so not surprised. And they're not even like into spirituality.
Okay.
One person even was like, I knew there was something so different about you, but I could never figure it out. They're like, now I know. Yeah. So I practiced sort of coming out of the closet on a few people, and it went well. And now it just will either come up naturally or it won't.
Okay. Well, so yeah, my coming out of the closet was 3.5 years ago when I started the UFO tour
Right.
My spiritual business. Because even though I had the spiritual business, I was still trying to be somewhat normal. but I was also simultaneously running a very mainstream, like, home staging interior design business. So my real estate agents, when I started the spiritual stuff, and they're like, "You're doing past life regression? What is that?" Like, so anyway, but it's so freeing. What I like, I'm sure you feel this way. Like, for me, it has been so freeing to be my full authentic self and not care what other people think.
It is. And it's so fun how now it's coming full circle. Like I was saying, when I first started channeling in public, the questions were so kind of 3D because we were more 3D, right? So people they were trying to understand everything cognitively, and they wanted all these details, and it was very analytical.
Hmm.
And now, you come across, and even when people don't understand what you're talking about, they respond more from their heart space. They're more loose, and they don't try understanding all the details. And so you can just see everybody's consciousness rising and rising and rising, I would say a lot over this last maybe 3 years.
Yeah, I love that. Well, so for you, what has, if you can even name one, but one of the most transformative things about working with these energies in this human life, this human Beth experience?
Like, I don't know, every day something happens. I don't know that I could, maybe it's hard to point at one thing. I think maybe when I was wanting to be a really clean channel and practicing that, and had to come face to face with this deeper level of self-criticism that was going on inside of me that I was not acknowledging, that was quite invisible. And seeing how that would, for lack of a better term, crunch down, the opposite of expansion, of it would squeeze and limit what I could share with others. Because of course you can't share with others what you can't share with yourself. You can't give away what you can't already give yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had been working on this my whole life, and I have always loved the quote, I think Oprah said it, of being a perfectionist doesn't stop you from being judged. It just stops you from being seen. And so I was already on that journey working with that, this level of deeper vulnerability and openness. And then when I hit this lack of self-love, my guides were so sweet. They knew not to trigger me. They kept saying, "You're extra spicy with yourself."
I like that.
Because if they would have said, "You're really self-critical," I would have been self-critical about my self-criticalness.
Yeah.
Right. So they were so clever. And I just really wanted to work on that. And I think when I really started to understand that and could open up to more love from myself, then I could sort of take the next step into what I think a lot of people can relate to, is working on the last bits of judgment that are a natural part of being a human, coming out of exploring this deep 3D world, right? Experience. And so then I could start to let go of judgment and move more into oneness. But I think that's where really this last phase started.
Yeah, for me too. And that's actually what my new book is about. And what they've given to me is, really it is doing this deep healing work, because if we're judging ourselves, then we are still judging other people. And so the more that we can just love ourselves, be worthy, and then we can really come from this pure love place and the oneness.
Yes, and it's true. And it's everyone's deepest work, self-worth and safety.
Yeah.
Right. And it's my understanding as a soul collective, that's what we wanted to explore. So that's why we went really deep.
Yep.
And that's why we're all really hung up on all those feeling so separate from source, from self, from each other, from love, is because that's what we wanted to explore and experience. And the other thing that has been shared with me is that it's like a slingshot. So the deeper you go into that denser energy or separation, however you want to label it, the faster you're going to shoot up into integration and oneness. And that's what Ascension is about, is integration. And so we're on now the fast track back to wholeness, and it's just starting to get good.
Yeah, I agree. Well, in our last little bit of time here, this has gone way too fast. Are there any other words of wisdom from from the collective, from you, anything you want to share before we talk about where to find you?
I would say whatever you're doing, keep going. If you feel stuck, still just keep taking baby steps, because you don't notice all the work you're doing that you're not conscious of. And then later with hindsight, you'll be like, oh, yeah, I was really working through that well, but you can't see it when you're in it. So I think, in addition to sharing love and compassion and trust with yourself, keep going. Yeah. My guides always say to me, just taking a step in any direction is better than just staying in one spot, because you don't know, because it will illuminate then what it is that you want. So even if you step in the wrong direction, that will illuminate what you want. And that's been sort of a life lesson for me, because you can get afraid and feel not safe, and then you're afraid to take the baby steps. So I would say keep going. Yeah. And let's see. I think that's it. Just remember, we're all love. We're all source, playing this funny game where we look in this little tiny pinhole called an incarnation. And we look in this, and then we create this through this pinhole, this physical reality. But that's not what we really are.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I would love for you to share where people can find you, what your website is, socials that you're on, and all of that.
Let's see. It's Beth Ward Channeling. So BETHWARD channeling.com. And that's what my Instagram is also. And I obviously do channeled sessions. I do classes. I also do like coaching. A lot of people will call me for just one of my skills that I loaded up into this incarnation is sort of to very quickly get a handle on what people's gifts are and how to help them use them.
Beautiful.
And yeah, so I make a really good sounding board. And the group that I channel is very empowering. Like that's what comes through me, is highly empowering information.
Yeah, well, because they are from the higher dimensional realms too. Because there are channels that are channeling from a little bit lower dimensional levels or frequencies, but yeah.
Yep.
Well, Beth, it has truly been a pleasure to have you on. I am so glad that Bruce paired us up together and we found each other essentially through Ruben's community. And yeah, and Ruben, his show, the interviews with EDs, is what made it normal for me to feel like, oh, I can do that too, where before it was like taboo. So anyway.
I was just thinking, if you don't put this in your links or whatever. So it's interviews with extra dimensionals. And I think you can find it on Gaia. And he's got like 3 seasons, maybe the 3rd season's on Vimeo. But it is literally like both of us are saying, like channels and different beings from the whole spectrum. And I think it's really, people find sort of what they want are curious about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like a buffet of
It is.
higher dimensional energy.
It is. Well, I can't wait to see how all this is going to unfold for all of us. And again, I thank you so much for being here. And for those of you watching or listening, thank you as always. And I'll see you next time on Connection to the Cosmos. Aloha.
Thanks, Lisa.